Guys, it's Gunnar. What's going on? Boy, do I have a treat for you today. I got my chestnuts in, so we're planting them here this afternoon. Now, we've been in this area of the property before. I've got fruit trees, I've got dogwood shrubs along here, I've got switchgrass in this area. Now I'm adding chestnuts. Now, chestnuts have been proven to be 100-to-1 ratio more palatable and more attractive to deer. Now, the reasoning for this is they don't have any tannins in them, which inhibits whitetails or any animal from absorbing the nutrients they get from that said food source. So that's why they're more attractive. That's why they're more palatable. These deer prefer chestnuts where they are when they're available. Now, that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to plant some of these, because I want to see, is this really true? Are these chestnuts that much more attractive to whitetails? Well, we're going to find out here once these start producing. Now, the reason I went with chestnuts versus maybe an oak is chestnuts are going to produce far sooner than an oak tree will. Within the first 3 to 5 years, chestnuts are going to start producing a crop. Now, it's not going to be a bumper crop like when they hit 10 years or 15 years. They can produce up to 20 pounds per tree of chestnuts. Now, that's a lot of forage. That's a lot of food source and food value for deer when you're talking about just something that you can plant, and in 10 years you're having a huge impact on that whitetail herd with a food source value. So that's the reason that I went with these chestnuts. Now, a cool thing with these chestnuts is, guys, it's Gunnar, look, a lot of you guys have been talking to me, telling me how you need help. Well, I want to talk to you today about whitetail coaching. One-on-one virtual coaching with me. We'll go in depth on whatever problems, whatever help you need. We'll find the solution you're looking for. Shoot me a text, 608-632-7233. 608-632-7233. I got your back for life. Now let's get back to the video. You can pick different varieties that mature at different times of the year and start dropping acorns. So this chestnut I got in my hand right now is going to start producing fruit in November. This one right here is an October tree. Now, there's a strategy behind all of this. I've got December, I've got August, I've got September trees. I'm not putting them up here next to where the stand location is eventually going to go. I'm putting my prime time, October, November trees within shot distance of my future stand, right in this corner here. That's one of the big things that I want to talk to you guys about, is having an idea of where you're planting these trees, but at the same time, how it fits into that plan. Now, if I went ahead and planted August trees where they're dropping their nuts in August, right here in this corner where I want my stand location to be, and my November tree down 50 yards behind the camera here at the end of the row, that doesn't do me a whole lot of good when all of the deer are hitting that tree in the heart of the season when I'm sitting in this stand versus this one here at 20 yards. So think about that stuff. Remember, we're using these habitat strategies, plantings, to benefit us at the end of the day for hunting. So I wanted to kind of go over that, but the way I'm doing this is kind of just like all the other trees. But basically, I'm looking at this root system, not entirely huge. I'm digging about a 1x1 hole, once again, like I did with my conifers, but I'm fitting these roots in that hole, sizing them up. I'll dig my hole, and what I'm doing is, like all the others, I'm chopping that dirt up. I've got my car mat. I'm using that to chop that dirt up. I don't want clumps. I want nice loose dirt so those roots can spread out. But I'm doing a few things different. I didn't make a video on my fruit tree plantings because I wasn't doing YouTube yet, but this is very similar to that. Now, what I'm doing, you guys might not be able to see this, but I'll get a cutaway of it, is I'm utilizing a fence post for these trees. They're a little bit bigger versus a dogwood where I'm just using that fiberglass rod. I want a little bit more sturdy setup here. Now, as you can see, I'm using just a regular fence post. Now, we've got a ton of these laying around just from having cattle in the past and having fenced a lot of this property. But what I'm doing is I'm burying that fence post just deep enough to get to those teeth. Now, the reason for that is I don't want, when this tree gets 5-10 years old, when I pull this stick, or once this tree clears this tube and I'm ready to remove that tube, that root system is going to be pretty big. So if I had those teeth buried, it's going to be right into the heart of those roots, and I'm not going to be able to get it out. So I want a thin, narrow piece of steel right in there, just strong enough to hold that tree up where it's not inhibiting my root system when I do go ahead and pull that out. So that is one of the main things that I want to get across to you guys, is don't bury that fence post. There's a few different things you can use. You can use some steel, just some straight steel, some rebar, anything like that. But I'm really utilizing these fence posts because they're a lot more solid. I don't want a buck to come in here and start investigating and knock this whole thing over, and I don't want the wind to blow it over. I want these trees to produce and grow well. So I want it to be basically out of sight, out of mind. I want to bury that fence post just up to those teeth and allow that tree to just mature on its own, so I don't have to be concerned about if something's knocking it over, if the wind's blowing it over. I don't want to have to come checking these. So that is one of the things that I like to do. Now, another thing is, with this tree kit that I've got a black weed mat here. Now, the reasoning for that black weed mat is I'm suppressing the weed competition around that root system. I don't want other weeds sucking moisture from my root system of my chestnut trees within a close proximity of that root system. So this is a 2x2 sheet of just black plastic, and I'm using that because, on the other hand, it's retaining that ground moisture. It's reducing my ground evaporation. It's holding moisture, so on those dewy mornings where maybe it's dry out in July, but on those dewy mornings, there's a little bit of moisture at the ground level. I'm keeping that there. I'm not just sucking that right up if I don't have it covered. So that's another thing that I'm utilizing with these chestnut trees. Did that with the apple trees. All of these trees are alive. They're doing very well. They're not quite clearing my 60-inch tube here, but I wouldn't bet on, by the end of this summer here, the growing season, some of these trees might start to clear those 60-inch tubes. And as you can see, these trees aren't very big, so my apples, my peaches, and my plums did pretty good last year, and especially in a drought, so I'm really happy with that. But that just goes to show that these tree tubes, and if you protect these trees, if you do everything right, they will grow. And that's the key, is just to do things right, take your time with it, and plant them correctly. Now, another thing, I'm using these 60-inch tubes. Now, versus my dogwood, which I may have to go in and add a bigger tube if they do start getting browsed down heavy. But with these fruit trees, I'm using that 60-inch tube because I want these trees to get up high. I don't want them getting nipped off at head high of that deer. I want these trees to have that opportunity to get up here above deer browse level, so then they can just go ahead and take off and grow nice and tall for me. And like I said, 3 to 5 years, these chestnut trees are going to start producing a crop. I want that crop in 3 to 5 years. I don't want to have to wait 10 years to get a crop. I want a solid crop in 3 to 5 years. So I'm protecting these trees to the best of my ability. Now, when I go ahead and I put these tree tubes on, I'm just sliding it over that tree. I've got 2 zip ties on the bottom half of that tube. I like to keep them bent so it's a little bit easier to roll them over and snug them up. But then that last high zip tie, I'm running through my tree tube, and I'm going ahead and I'm wrapping that around my fence post so it's secured to the fence post. So that tree tube's not flopping around anywhere. I don't have any ropes hanging, nothing like that. I want a nice tight fit, so I don't have to concern myself with, is that tree tube doing its job? Is 100% doing its job all day, every day? Now, another reason behind those tree tubes is it's not just protecting these trees from the deer. Trees need to photosynthesize to grow. And high wind speeds have been known and proven to decrease photosynthesis. So when you get those high winds up on the ridge like I have right now, I've got a 10, 12 mile an hour wind. That's going to reduce my photosynthesis process if that tree is not protected. Now, with these tree tubes, it limits that wind. So these trees have an advantage over all the other species that are growing because they are protected. And at the same time, with this nice white color, it's reflecting sunlight into that tree. So I'm getting the benefit of all day sun here. Now, I'm spacing these trees out 20 to 30 feet because they are a canopy tree. So you have to give them adequate room to grow. You don't want to scrunch these trees in nice and tight and stunt them, in a sense, when they do become those canopy trees that you're looking for. So basically what I've got here, what I'm going to go over is I've got my chestnut line spaced 20 foot. I've got them 10 foot from my apple trees and my pear trees, my plums. So I'm giving them enough space. These trees are gonna sit higher than my apples, my pears, and my plums. So I'm not concerned with them getting adequate sunlight from those fruit trees below, because they're gonna grow taller. They're gonna be reaching for that sunlight more. That way, I've got all different solar angles covered. I've got dogwood down low as a shrubbery base. I've got fruit trees sitting a little bit higher, 8, 10, 12 feet tall. And then I've got my canopy trees with my chestnuts that are gonna get 15 to 20, 25, 30 feet tall. So all different solar angles, a bunch of different diversity here. It's what I'm going for. I'm creating this edge habitat and an orchard edge. I'm providing food value as well as cover value along this whole line of movement, this new line of movement that I'm creating. This is a perfect situation for a big buck or a doe family group or any deer in general to come along, cruise along this, and make their way out to the food plots and the ag fields. That's what I'm going for here. I'm adding diversity, I'm adding habitat back, and at the same time, I'm producing a high quality stand location right here in this mature oak tree. I'm basically guiding these deer right past this soon to be stand location. Think of adding edge as creating a road system for humans. We're gonna drive where the best road is, the best route possible. Now, if that best route possible for a deer has good quality browse, juicy apples, soft mass, and then at the same time, highly palatable, highly attractive chestnuts, that's hard for them not to lean towards and be attracted to. So that's what I'm going for here, adding diversity here, cover food value, and then at the end of the day, tying that all in with a high quality stand location. So when you're thinking about adding habitat improvements, doing some habitat management, adding fruit trees, planting switchgrass, planting food plots, it all has to lay into a specific plan to benefit you in the long term. If I added this and I had no trees around for a stand location, yeah, it's fine and dandy, it's good for the wildlife in the area, but I'm not directly benefiting from it. I'm trying to create something that I can directly benefit from, as well as the wildlife in the area and the deer. So that's what I want to talk to you guys here today about is make sure when you're going ahead and you're planting your trees for wildlife, make sure you're doing it correctly. Like I said, with these chestnuts, I've got that weed mat, little extra protection. I'm using a bigger stake in that fence post. Don't bury those teeth in there. Make sure you can get it out when that root system gets established. And then that 60-inch tree tube to allow that tree to mature and get up nice and high above deer browse level and allow that tree to photosynthesize at a higher rate than all the other competition with that wind speed and the reduced photosynthesis rates when it comes to that. Just make sure you're chopping that dirt up, get a nice loose soil for that root system to go ahead and spread out. Now, one more thing with that weed mat is it's forcing this root system of the chestnut to grow out. It's forcing it to look for moisture because it doesn't necessarily get the rainfall moisture right directly down at that stump. It's having to expand the root system, grow wide, and that's what we want. So if you're going ahead and you're planting some wildlife trees, use some of these tips. Think about some of these things, make sure you're doing it correctly. You want these trees to do the best that they possibly can, and at the end of the day, spending a little bit more time ensuring that these trees are in there properly, protected properly, and in a good spot for that future stand location is of the utmost importance. So I hope that helped you guys. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you on the next one.